You are watching Profunda TV with host Phyllis Haynes.
Lable, it is such a pleasure to talk with you. Talk to me about something you've shared with me in the past about the distinction between what you call a pioneer and a settler. What does that
Always
mean?
a pleasure to be in conversation with you, Phyllis. What that means is if you take a look at the pioneering people through history, um, they don't tend to settle in what they pioneered. Davy Crockett was always moving west. And, Socrates ended up being sentenced to death for his troubles. And we could go on and on. Moses did not enter the promised land. Pioneers aren't settlers. It's not, and to me, and this is personal to me, there's a connotation in the word settlers. It means you settle for this being good enough. And you don't have to go elsewhere to look, you've reached your goal. And pioneers really run into trouble when they try to be settlers. They're not good at it. And settlers run into trouble when they try to be pioneers. They're not good at it either. So I think we need to identify for ourselves whether we're pioneers or settlers. And there's not, one is not better than the other. I mean, what's the point of pioneering if nobody ever settles in what you've brought into the world? And what's the point of settling if some pioneer hasn't found the right place for you to be? So it's a matter of, in Plato's Republic, in which Socrates and his friends have a cocktail party. And I mean, literally, they were sitting around drinking wine, which explains some of the conclusions they came to. But they talk for about, if I remember, about 900 pages about what constitutes an optimal society. And after a lot of going back and forth, they finally settled in an optimal society is one in which everybody does what they do best. Philosopher kings shouldn't try to be shoemakers, and shoemakers shouldn't try to be philosopher kings. Now, we need leaders of our society. We also need good shoes. It's not a matter that one is better than the other, but the society will thrive best when everybody uses their talents. And so if you're a pioneer, go make trouble somewhere. Go stir things up. Go find new territories to explore. Be an explorer. Break the rules. If you're a settler, then yeah, find your way to fit into society. Determine what the rules are. See if you can stay within those rules. But don't try to trade identities. It turns out badly.
I think the metaphor is fabulous. I probably would talk about this from a holistic perspective, thinking that a settler, by its very nature, will create fertile ground for the next
Yes.
pioneer.
Yes.
So the pioneers will spring from the territory of the settler. So it's something that is an ongoing flow, like the seasons are, and that
Beautifully said.
yeah. And finding, but I find it helpful to me because I don't know where I am. I mean, I think that there are aspects of my being that do conform with being a settler. I am a mother. I am a wife. I'm a homemaker. At the same time, I am a renegade computer user and creative type. I love making things that don't necessarily exist. I'm writing ideas or looking for new ways to do things. How would you describe yourself in your metaphor?
In my metaphor, I'm a pioneer. And there's one warning I'd put out there. Pioneers do not lead easy lives, and they're not often appreciated in their lifetimes, which is fine, which is absolutely fine. But I chafe at rules. I chafe at having options narrowed down. To me, I like options to explode and create new options, and you know, in a flow of constant creativity. I don't necessarily, I mean, I enjoy people who ask why and give us new insight into why, you know, settled facts are the way that they are. But I really, really identify with people who ask why not.
Hmm.
And so I think that's the nature. But I heard you a bit, Phyllis, compartmentalizing your life. There are these different cubby holes. Do you find, though, that you bring talents from one element of your life into other elements of your life?
Absolutely. I think um, motherhood has altered my view of almost everything and informed better actions as a result of experiencing motherhood and the miraculousness of motherhood every day, even though my child is no longer a child at this point. There are miracles constantly every day. And it's made me compassionate, um, more open to other people's differences. Because if any parent knows that you think you know this person that you brought into the world, but they surprise you all the time. And that, I think, helps you be a better human.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you have to be a parent. That's another pioneer idea that I have. I think, in
Mm-hmm.
fact, not everyone should be a parent, but that's a whole other conversation. Um, yeah, no, other areas of my life, whereas my professional life in broadcasting, having to think quickly to tell a story, having to work under extraordinary pressure in short periods of time. I think that helped my parenting in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, that life has worked. I want to just stay in this conversation though, which is looking at your metaphor and then asking about us because we're engaged in this thing called conversation. Now, why is conversation useful to you? What is it that conversation brings for you?
When I was 60 years old, when I turned 60, I made a list of the 10 most important things I've learned in my life to that point. And either number one or number two, I don't remember, was that I've learned more from people who disagree with me than from people who agree with me.
Mm.
Conversation allows me insight into what I don't know, and how other people view it. Even if I think I know it, getting different views of it, it opens me up. And sadly, I don't find myself having much conversations anymore. Nobody is not nobody, but very few people share a point of view with me. Rather, they share a position with me. And that is not conducive to my learning anything. You don't learn anything from positions. You learn from points of view, because the only way a conversation works is if the other person is also looking to have their mental landscape expanded. So what conversation does for me It's exciting. It speaks to my pioneer nature. Here's something I didn't know before. I'd like to go and find out more about that. But there are other kinds of conversation too, where um, somebody just needs another point of view on their life and what they're going through in their life. And that can be helpful to them. And then there are times when I need other points of view about what's going on in my life and the challenges I have. And do that. Conversation is support, conversation is love, conversation is caring. So I really, really feel that my life wouldn't be as full without conversation, which is why, even though it's very hard to find, the pioneer nature in my soul says, don't stay where things are hard to find. Go find them. If they're hard to find, go find them. So, still trying to do that.
You made a distinction in your answer that I want to just revisit
Sure.
for the moment. The distinction between a position
And a point of view.
and a point of view. What is the distinction there?
Because a point of view means I know and accept that there are other points of views that are equally valid. The position says, Eureka, I have found it. This is it, and don't give me anything else but this. And if you try to converse with me, and I put that in quotation marks, I'm going to just prove you wrong because my position is right.
Thank you for clarifying that. That is very helpful because our society is locked into a conversation which is often positional these days. And I have no desire to revisit that conversation in this
Mhm.
conversation. But I am motivated to keep the conversation going and talk to people with open points of view so we can share this practice with others. So you just gave me a way to explain my raison d'etre. You
Mhm.
just really helped me think about that because um, I think we're losing as a society the ability to listen. We're losing critical thinking. We want to erase information as opposed to adding
Mhm.
information and giving people ways to understand difficult information.
What can you share, Phyllis, about your work that are your tools to do that, to open people up, to make them amenable to other points of view? What tools do you use?
I have to give credit to a problem as opposed to a tool.
Okay.
I think in my life, I've experienced in so many instances, not being listened to, not being
Wow.
heard, that I became sensitized to what it means to not be heard. So for
Wow.
me, it's very important, even if I disagree with you, to listen to you. Now, that doesn't mean I will listen to someone who is abusive to me, but I am open to listening to even the most opposite, distant viewpoints from mine because I have experienced being shut down, discounted, um, marginalized, uh, not because I'm such a victim, no, but because I think even you can probably relate to how being even a young person, sometimes older people will just dismiss your
Hmm.
idea. It's not just the
Hmm.
African American experience for me, but
Sure.
all of the, experience as a woman when I may have had insight into solving a problem and a man would just dismiss
Mhm.
that input. So all of those configurations have contributed to me being compassionate about listening and asking again,
Oh, you
and
just use such a key word, compassion. I think of the Hindu saying, Tattva Matsam, you are that. What you think is the other is you. And I think if we can open our hearts, we can open our minds. If we close our hearts, we close our minds.
I wrote an article recently that is in alignment with that. And it's an article about how do we follow our hearts if we don't understand the language of the heart.
Ah,
So combined with listening skills, it's also necessary to learn or listen to the cues, one of your words, for someone else's heart. You know how we take a
yes.
stethoscope and we listen to hearts, doctors do that. I got a rudimentary set of skills, but one where I work to listen to the heart of the other person. So if you're talking to me about apples and oranges, but I feel deep down you really want to talk about Tonka trucks, there's a part of me that hears there's something else there. And to keep going further and further and asking. So the process of inquiry and listening is crucial. I don't
So,
necessarily know everything from the first answer. I don't know everything from the last answer, but I have the practice of asking.
that's key. That's one of the reasons I call you the Socrates of our times. A man once went to the Delphi Oracle, okay, asked Apollo, who's the wisest person on earth? And Apollo answered, Socrates. Usually the answer came from the oracle in riddles and that kind of thing. This was a flat out Socrates. So the man went to Athens, sought out Socrates, and told him what had happened and said, why are you the wisest man on earth? And Socrates says, damned if I know. One thing, he said, one thing might be the key to it. I know what I don't know. And I think that is the key to it. It's knowing that you don't know things. But I want to, what you just laid out about what you've learned about how to listen and how to be heart to heart. I heard a story that after the Buddha went through his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, he spent 7 weeks under the tree trying to figure out what had happened. And on the 49th day, he stood up and he looked at the tree and looked around and said, this cannot be taught. And still, the gods and all the powers of the universe begged him to go teach it. And out of compassion, he went and tried to teach it. What you have learned about listening, the tools and the skills of listening, what you have learned about the tools and the skills of compassion, is it teachable? Is it something you can give us, Phyllis?
I cannot take this role that you have positioned me into as the teacher of this. What I can say from a humble place is that I hope our conversation or conversations will be useful to others. It's a wish that by practicing and being caught, maybe sometimes I will not do it as perfectly as I would like. But even in that, it will help others consider their own pursuit of truth, their own pursuit of their own inner truth, and they're listening for others. Now, I have benefited from being in all the conversations with you. You are someone who, through a miracle, and we've already talked about this miracle of how we've met,
Mhm.
People will have to look at other shows perhaps to find that story. But you came in this miracle and you demonstrated all of this understanding, the ability to share with humility, the ability to pause and think, the ability to ask key questions, and to tell your own story in a way that creates change. Your writings create change. I learned about the Lamed Vav from you. Now, maybe there are a few million people or a few thousand people, I don't know, who know what the Lamed Vav was, but I didn't know. But the way you told me has made me pay attention to other examples. And I get richer when I talk to you. I don't walk away feeling poorer. One more thing. There was a writer named, or there is a writer named Martha Beck, I met years ago. And she had a simple formula. She said, when they asked her, how do you know something is good for you or not? She says, when you are close to it, if you feel warm, go towards it. If you feel cold,
It's
back
great.
away.
It's great.
And that is, when I'm in your presence, I notice my energy is good. I notice I feel heard. I feel something is going to happen. Something good is going to be born out of the conversation. I don't know. It's not, it may not be, but there's always that potential when I'm talking to you. And so
And
you
nobody
do
brings
this.
that out like you, Phyllis. I'm not just trying to hand out compliments. I'm speaking truth here. And what you give me the space to do, and a lot of people don't like it, is to use my superpower. And my superpower is the the uh, the tool that I use is I confuse people. And what I hear the most is, I never thought of it that way. Or, wow, that's a way to look at it that I've never seen before, or whatever. And it's because I'm willing to break rules and break barriers. But I confuse people, and that is a benefit. You get interviewed by so many people who just want to put you in a box, put the barcode on you, and okay, so what is it that you do? And if you were going to give people the essence or whatever, what is? And I tell them straight out, they refuse to accept it. They're trying to put me in a box. I once wrote a children's story for adult called Milton. Milton discovers his verb. And it's about a man who wakes up one morning and he wakes up and he's in a magic box. And he talks to different people during the day. And depending on the relationship they have, a different label shows up on his box. So when he speaks to his kids, the label dad shows up there. When he speaks to his manager, the label employee shows up there. And he tries to, he decides he's going to go to the doctor to find out what he can do to get out of this box. And the doctor diagnoses him with runaway noun syndrome, which is we try to objectify people. We try to make them a person, place, or thing rather than a becoming or a dynamic force. And in order to get out of the box, Milton has to discover his verb.
Thank you, Label. That we all have to find our verb. That is
Yep.
fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I like this other thing that you do that I think that the truly great rabbis and great clergy do is that they take something so complex and make it into a form that you can really hear it and see it and taste it. It's not an easy task to do that.
It's not, you'll remember when we were at camp where we first met.
The conversation among masters, yes.
Yes. And the first thing I said that drew you to me intellectually and as a friend is there was a question on the table. What does coaching have to do to become to fulfill its potential? And I, who am not a coach, let alone a master coach, but was just there because I am the Forrest Gump of this kind of stuff. I always show up where I don't belong, and because I don't know I don't belong there, nobody else knows I don't belong there. And I kind of raised my hand and I said, wouldn't you want to also ask the question, what does coaching have to let go of in order to achieve its potential? And that's the key to what you just described. Here's the secret. Life has an underlying simplicity. What the great storytellers and great religious figures are able to do is say, lose the complexity. Your brain loves complexity, and it's not that complex. Just let go of that. And that's where I find gold when I try to take something that our society has made complex and make it simple. There's a story. I don't know if I've told you this one before. It's about the great Rabbi Hillel. Hillel was one of two of the leaders of the Talmudic movement. I think probably in the 1st or 2nd century. I'd have to look it up. And the other great rabbi, they were complements. They were yin yang. Hillel was very, very relaxed about things and relaxed about the laws. And Shammai, his competition, if you will, was very strict about it. It's finding the exact right meaning of the law and doing the right thing. And so there was this Roman nobleman who wanted to poke fun at the Jewish religion and at the rabbis. So he goes over to Shammai and he says, I'll make you a deal. I'll convert to Judaism as long as you can teach me the entire Torah while I can stand on one leg. And Shammai says, are you kidding? There are 613 commandments, and there are sub-commandments, and then there's commentary on those commandments, then there's commentary on that commentary, and you want me to teach the whole thing to you while you can stand on one leg? And the man says, yeah, that's the deal. Shammai has his people throw the guy out of there. And he and the nobleman and his buddies go around laughing and poking fun. So he goes over to Hillel and makes the same offer to Hillel. And you can teach me the entire Torah while I can stand on one leg, then I'll convert to Judaism. And Hillel says, all right, you're on. The guy says, are you sure? I mean, I can't stand on one leg very long. Won't take but a second. And the man stands on one leg, and Hillel says to him, love thy neighbor as thyself. That's the whole of it. The rest, all the other laws, every other kind of thing, that's just commentary. Now, go study that and study the commentary too. But it's what you said before. It's compassion. If you can look at the other person and say, this is me, everything becomes so simple. Everything becomes so simple.
Thank you, Lable.